Ladies and gentlemen, most people think wealth is built by intelligence, bold ideas, or dramatic moves. That belief is comforting and mostly wrong. Real wealth is built quietly, so quietly that most people don't even notice the habits creating it. Today, I want to talk about 5 habits that quietly make people rich, not quickly, not loudly, but reliably. Most people believe that financial success comes from intelligence, education, or finding the perfect investment. In reality, wealth is built first by avoiding the mistakes that quietly destroy it. The difference between those who become wealthy and those who struggle is often not brilliance, but the ability to stay out of trouble. Debt taken for status, emotional reactions to markets, impulsive spending, chasing trends, and copying others are the most common reasons people fall behind. Every bad decision creates friction against progress, and some decisions are not reversible. A single mistake can cancel years of discipline. Excessive borrowing limits future choices. Panic selling locks in losses, and lifestyle inflation slowly eats every raise. The quietly wealthy understand that survival comes before growth. They design their lives to reduce exposure to risk, not increase it. They keep their financial structure simple so fewer things can go wrong. They avoid leverage they do not need. They resist speculation disguised as investing. They prefer steady progress to dramatic wins. They know that the first rule of wealth is not making money, but not losing it. Emotional decisions are especially dangerous because they feel justified in the moment. Fear during downturns and greed during booms lead to the same outcome, permanent damage. Quietly wealthy people pause before acting. They question excitement. They question urgency. They understand that the market does not reward confidence, it rewards patience. They also avoid the social traps that destroy finances. Competing with neighbors, trying to look successful, upgrading too fast, and spending to impress create pressure that never ends. They choose independence over admiration. They measure success by stability, not appearance. They accept that boredom is safer than excitement. They avoid complexity because complexity multiplies error. They prefer rules over opinions and systems over predictions. They save first, spend later, and invest only what they can hold through uncertainty. They understand their own weaknesses and protect themselves from them. They remove temptation by automating good behavior. They create distance between impulse and action. Over time, this discipline compounds more powerfully than any strategy. While others chase opportunities, they eliminate dangers. While others look for shortcuts, they build foundations. This habit alone explains why average people often outperform brilliant ones financially. Intelligence can explain risks, but discipline prevents disaster. Knowledge can suggest strategies, but behavior determines outcomes. Wealth grows quietly when mistakes are rare. It disappears quickly when mistakes are frequent. The most successful investors are not those who predict the future, but those who survive long enough to benefit from time. They do not seek perfection, only durability. They accept that avoiding stupidity is easier and more reliable than chasing genius. In the long run, the quiet discipline of not making obvious errors builds more wealth than any clever idea ever could. Most people damage their future not with dramatic failures, but with small, repeated mistakes that feel harmless in the moment. These mistakes rarely trigger panic because they do not cause immediate pain. Instead, they slowly compound, quietly shaping outcomes years later. The danger is not that people are reckless. The danger is that they are casual with decisions that deserve respect. Money, time, and energy are fragile when handled without structure, and small leaks eventually sink even strong ships. One of the most common quiet mistakes is emotional decision-making. People react instead of thinking. Fear pushes them to sell at the worst time. Greed pushes them to buy when prices are already high. Stress leads to spending for comfort. Excitement leads to risk taken without understanding consequences. Each reaction feels justified in isolation, but together they create a pattern of poor outcomes. Emotional behavior does not cancel out over time. It compounds negatively. Another silent error is excessive debt. Debt is often normalized and disguised as progress. It feels productive at first because it provides access to things immediately. Over time, it limits freedom, increases stress, and removes flexibility. Debt reduces the ability to adapt when circumstances change. It turns small problems into large ones. The mistake is not using debt at all, but using it casually without considering long-term consequences. Once obligations pile up, recovery becomes slow and difficult. Lifestyle inflation is another quiet destroyer. As income rises, spending rises even faster. What was once a luxury becomes a necessity. Comfort becomes entitlement. Over time, higher earnings produce no security, only higher pressure. People work harder but feel poorer. The mistake is not enjoying success, but locking future choices into fixed expenses that cannot easily be undone. Wealth requires room to breathe. Lifestyle inflation suffocates it. Many people also make the mistake of trying to look successful instead of becoming successful. Status purchases, unnecessary upgrades, and comparison-driven spending are motivated by ego rather than need. These choices trade long-term stability for short-term approval. They feel rewarding socially, but financially they create fragility. True progress is invisible. When success is displayed too early, it often disappears later. Another quiet mistake is ignoring small inefficiencies. Missed savings, inconsistent investing, late payments, poor organization, and lack of tracking seem minor. Individually, they do not feel dangerous. Collectively, they create chaos. Progress requires order. Without systems, good intentions collapse under pressure. Small leaks are ignored because they do not hurt today, but they destroy tomorrow. Overconfidence in predictions is also dangerous. People believe they can time markets, anticipate trends, or outsmart uncertainty. This belief leads to concentration, leverage, and fragile strategies. The future is unpredictable. Those who assume certainty eventually encounter it. Survival requires margin of safety. Ignoring uncertainty is not optimism. It is negligence. Delay is another costly habit. People avoid admitting mistakes because it feels uncomfortable. They stay in failing investments, unproductive careers, or unhealthy financial habits longer than they should. Early correction is cheap. Late correction is expensive. The longer a mistake is ignored, the more power it gains. Wisdom is not avoiding error entirely. It is recognizing error quickly and adjusting without ego. Environment also plays a role. Surroundings influence behavior silently. Constant exposure to temptation, distraction, and noise weakens discipline. Relying on willpower alone is unreliable. People fail not because they lack character, but because their environment works against them. Changing surroundings is often more effective than trying harder. The most dangerous belief is that mistakes must be dramatic to matter. In reality, progress is rarely destroyed by one loud failure. It is eroded by small, repeated errors tolerated for too long. Futures are not ruined overnight. They are quietly negotiated away through habits that feel normal. Success comes less from doing extraordinary things and more from avoiding predictable ones. Protecting the downside matters more than chasing upside. When mistakes are rare, progress compounds naturally. Quiet discipline creates quiet strength, and over time, that strength becomes a future that no single mistake can easily destroy. Most people believe motivation is the engine of success. They wait to feel inspired, energized, or confident before taking action. This approach feels natural, but it is deeply flawed. Motivation is emotional, and emotions are unstable. They rise during excitement and disappear during stress, boredom, or uncertainty. When progress depends on motivation, results become inconsistent. That is why discipline consistently outperforms motivation over the long run. Discipline is not about intensity. It is about reliability. It shows up on days when motivation is absent. While motivation asks, "How do I feel today?" Discipline asks, "What needs to be done regardless of how I feel?" Wealth, growth, and progress are built on actions repeated over long periods. not on bursts of enthusiasm. The people who succeed are not those who feel motivated most often, but those who act consistently even when they don't feel like it. One reason discipline works better is that it reduces decision making. Motivation requires constant negotiation with yourself. Every day becomes a debate. Should I save today or spend? Should I invest now or wait? Should I stick to the plan or change it? Discipline removes these questions. Decisions are made once, then followed repeatedly. This saves mental energy and prevents emotional interference. Discipline also creates structure. Structure protects people from their own weaknesses. Everyone has predictable patterns of failure. Some overspend when stressed. Some avoid action when uncertain. Some chase risk when confident. Motivation does nothing to fix these patterns. Discipline anticipates them. It builds guardrails in advance. Automatic saving, scheduled investing, fixed rules, and clear limits all reduce the chance of emotional mistakes. Another advantage of discipline is that it works quietly. It does not require public commitment or external validation. Motivated people often announce their goals. Disciplined people rarely do. They focus on process instead of appearance. They understand that progress does not need applause. Results speak later. This quiet approach reduces ego involvement, which is a major source of poor decisions. Motivation often leads to overconfidence. When people feel inspired, they overestimate what they can handle. They take on too much, change too many things at once, or adopt unrealistic plans. Discipline is conservative. It respects limits. It focuses on what can be sustained, not what feels impressive. Sustainable progress beats dramatic effort that collapses after a short time. Discipline also supports long-term thinking. Motivation seeks immediate reward. Discipline accepts delayed reward. Wealth requires patience. Compounding works slowly, and progress often feels invisible for long periods. Motivated people get frustrated when results are not immediate. Disciplined people expect this delay and continue anyway. They understand that consistency today creates options tomorrow. Another reason discipline wins is that it reduces exposure to temptation. Motivated people rely on willpower to resist bad choices. Willpower fades. Disciplined people reduce temptation itself. They change environments, limit access, and automate decisions. By making bad choices harder to execute, discipline removes the need for constant self-control. Discipline also improves resilience. When setbacks occur, motivated people often quit because their emotional fuel is gone. Disciplined people adjust and continue. Their identity is tied to the process, not the outcome of any single moment. This resilience keeps them in the game long enough for progress to accumulate. Over time, discipline compounds in the same way money does. Small, repeated actions create large results. Missed days do not destroy progress, but abandoning discipline does. Motivation comes and goes, but discipline creates momentum that carries forward even during difficult periods. The truth is simple. Motivation can start change, but it cannot sustain it. Discipline sustains what motivation begins. Those who rely on motivation build fragile futures. Those who rely on discipline build durable ones. In the long run, the future belongs not to the most inspired, but to the most consistent. Ego is one of the most destructive forces in wealth building, precisely because it disguises itself as confidence, ambition, and self-belief. Most people don't think ego is hurting them. They think it's helping them stand out. In reality, ego quietly pushes people into decisions that feel good emotionally, but are damaging financially. It turns money into a way to prove worth instead of a tool to build freedom. When ego is in control, decisions stop being practical and start being performative. One of the first ways ego causes damage is through the need to impress. People begin spending not based on utility, but on visibility. Cars, homes, gadgets, and lifestyles are chosen to signal success rather than support it. These choices lock people into fixed costs that reduce flexibility. Wealth depends on optionality, the ability to adapt, wait, and choose. Ego replaces optionality with obligation. Once spending is driven by image, every financial decision becomes heavier and riskier. Ego also distorts risk-taking. Wanting to feel smart or superior leads people to chase complex strategies, bold investments, and concentrated bets. They want to be right in a visible way. They want stories, not stability. This mindset favors excitement over probability. It ignores downside in favor of potential bragging rights. Markets, however, do not reward confidence or cleverness. They reward survival. Ego encourages people to operate without margin of safety, which makes even small mistakes catastrophic. Another quiet cost of ego is the inability to admit mistakes. When identity is tied to being right, changing course feels like failure. People defend bad decisions longer than they should. They hold losing investments, stick with unproductive strategies, and delay corrections because admitting error hurts pride. Early mistakes are small and manageable. Late mistakes are expensive and permanent. Ego turns a correctable error into a long-term problem by refusing to let go. Comparison is another ego-driven trap. People measure their progress against others instead of against their own goals. This creates constant dissatisfaction. Someone else's success becomes pressure rather than inspiration. Comparison encourages overspending, overworking, and overreaching. It pushes people to accelerate timelines unnaturally. Wealth, however, is personal. It grows at different speeds for different people. Comparing paths only leads to rushed decisions that increase risk. Ego also seeks recognition. Titles, applause, and external validation become priorities. People accept stress, instability, and poor financial trade-offs because the role looks impressive. They sacrifice long-term health and freedom for short-term status. True wealth is not being admired. It is having control over time, energy, and choices. Ego trades control for attention, often without realizing the cost. Overconfidence is another expression of ego. People begin to believe they are exceptions to basic rules. They underestimate risk, ignore probabilities, and dismiss advice. They assume past success guarantees future outcomes. This mindset creates fragile strategies that work only under perfect conditions. When uncertainty appears, ego prevents adaptation. Humility allows learning and adjustment. Ego demands persistence, even when persistence is destructive. Ego also amplifies emotional decision-making. Fear of looking foolish delays action. Greed fueled by envy encourages risk. Pride blocks reflection. Money decisions become emotional battles instead of rational choices. Over time, these emotions create inconsistent behavior that undermines long-term progress. The quietly wealthy understand a simple truth. Independence is more valuable than admiration. They do not need to prove anything. They make decisions privately, patiently, and with restraint. They accept boring progress over impressive failure. They value durability over drama. In the end, ego is expensive because it increases risk, delays correction, and reduces flexibility. Humility does the opposite. It protects capital, encourages learning, and preserves optionality. Wealth grows best in silence, guided by calm judgment rather than the need to be seen. Those who control ego don't just make better financial decisions. They build lives that are harder to break. The habit of accepting boredom and building simple, repeatable routines is one of the most misunderstood advantages in wealth creation. Most people assume progress should feel exciting. They believe growth must come with constant stimulation, big wins, and visible momentum. When life feels repetitive or slow, they assume something is wrong. In reality, boredom is often a sign that a system is working. The quietly wealthy understand that excitement usually signals risk, while boredom signals stability. Boring habits remove drama from decision-making. When actions are predictable and routine, emotions lose power. Regular saving, steady investing, and consistent work patterns do not demand daily judgment calls. This reduces mistakes. The fewer decisions you have to make, the fewer chances you have to be wrong. Wealth grows best in environments where decisions are limited, not constantly debated. Simple habits also survive stress better than complex strategies. Complex plans depend on perfect execution and favorable conditions. When circumstances change, they break. Simple habits are durable. Saving a fixed percentage, investing regularly, avoiding unnecessary debt, and maintaining a long-time horizon do not rely on forecasts or timing. They continue working even during uncertainty. Durability matters more than brilliance because wealth requires survival over long periods. Repetition is another powerful advantage. Doing the same sensible actions month after month feels unremarkable, but repetition is how compounding works. Progress is invisible in the short term. There are no dramatic milestones. This invisibility causes many people to quit too early. The quietly wealthy tolerate this discomfort. They understand that meaningful results appear only after long periods of consistency. They stay patient while others search for faster paths. Boring habits also protect against emotional interference. News cycles, market movements, and social comparison create pressure to act. Exciting strategies invite reaction. Calm routines resist it. When a plan is simple and familiar, there is less temptation to panic during downturns or chase trends during booms. This emotional stability prevents permanent damage caused by impulsive behavior. Another advantage of boring systems is that they free mental energy. Dramatic approaches require constant attention, monitoring, and adjustment. They create stress and distraction. Simple habits operate quietly in the background. This leaves time and focus for health, relationships, and thoughtful work. Wealth is not only about money. It is also about peace of mind and control over attention. Many people mistake boredom for stagnation. They abandon stable paths because they feel slow, not because they are ineffective. This impatience resets progress repeatedly. Every restart sacrifices accumulated gains. The quietly wealthy resist this urge. They accept that growth rarely feels impressive while it is happening. They trust the process instead of constantly searching for confirmation. Boring habits also reduce exposure to catastrophic risk. High excitement strategies often involve leverage, speculation, or concentration. These amplify both gains and losses. Simple habits favor moderation, diversification, and margin of safety. They are designed to avoid ruin rather than maximize short-term returns. Avoiding ruin is the most important rule of long-term success. Over time, boring habits create a powerful contrast. While others experience cycles of enthusiasm and regret, the quietly wealthy experience steady progress. Their lives appear uneventful financially, but their position strengthens year after year. Stability compounds just as surely as money does. The truth is uncomfortable but clear. Excitement feels productive, but it is unreliable. Boredom feels unproductive, but it is dependable. Wealth rewards dependability. Those who accept repetition, simplicity, and patience give time the opportunity to work in their favor. In the long run, boring habits do not just build wealth. They protect it, sustain it, and make it permanent. In the end, wealth is not created by luck, intelligence, or dramatic breakthroughs. It is created by behavior, quiet behavior, disciplined behavior, repeated behavior. The habits we discuss today may not make headlines, and they will not impress strangers, but they build something far more valuable than attention. They build independence. Avoiding stupidity matters more than seeking brilliance. Living below your means matters more than increasing your income. Patience matters more than prediction. Emotional control matters more than market timing. And boring consistency matters more than excitement. The world will always tempt you with shortcuts, trends, and comparisons. Ignore them. Focus instead on protecting your capital, controlling your behavior, and giving time the chance to work for you. Because wealth is not built in moments of excitement. It is built quietly, slowly, and deliberately. If you master these habits, you may never look rich, but one day you will wake up free.